exciting webinar for our series of webinar. And today we have an exciting presentation about how to kickstart your R group, how to make it more exciting, and many other things really useful for the R community in general. We have just a small glitch. I'm really sorry, I have to fix it. Just bear with me 1 minute. Okay, I hope it is fixed. So yeah, I was saying, yeah, we have two person that will do this. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I had just one mic open. So yeah, I was saying that we have really an exciting presentation really on creating our R community and how to make it fun and really how to improve. And it's based off the experience of two great persons. So we have McConnell and Julia Müller. They are both PhD students at the University of Freiburg, and where they conduct quantitative psycholinguistic research. So there they founded a statistic group for linguists, and really to focus also on helping postgraduate students and early career researchers who gather to learn fundamental cutting-edge topic in statistics. And I think they are really also involved in the Our Ladies Freiburg community there, where they host workshops. So they are both passionate about statistical education in general, particularly for women and other representative groups. And they also outspoken anti-diverse fans. So we are really, really lucky to have them. And I think it will be a really exciting topic. And I'm really sorry for the glitch at the beginning. So over to you guys, Kyla and Julia.
Yeah, thank you. We're really glad to be here, and this is a topic that we really love to talk about. So we're really happy to be able to talk about this today. Yeah, so today we're going to tell you a little bit about our experience with running rstats groups, and we really hope the main thing you'll take away from this is just a little bit of inspiration about how you could implement something like this yourself. So like you already know, I'm Kyla, this is Julia. We're both PhD students here in Freiburg in Germany, and we both do linguistic research. Yeah, and we'll tell you a little bit about our story with R. You can see here how it started and how it's going. We started out early in our PhD. We had learned R from advisors, from teachers, in sort of an apprentice system. So here's how you do it, just do it the same way, don't worry about it. But we didn't really have so much of a connection to the R community. We didn't know a lot of things to do with different packages, or we weren't really up to date. We didn't have Twitter accounts. We didn't even know what GitHub was. So we were just starting out using R purely as a tool that we only sort of understood. And now, after a couple of years, we consider ourselves to be R enthusiasts who talk way too much about R and our various involvements in the R community, spend way too much time on rstats Twitter, and developing all sorts of materials and workshops for different topics to do with R. So today, we want to convince you about why you should start an R group. And in starting a group for R not only gives you the support and community to help you do your best work in R, but it also will allow you to contribute to the wider R community. And that's something that we think is important and is a very special part of R as a language and as a system. So in this talk, we're going to share our experiences and our tips for how to foster a group that is inclusive and accessible for everyone. So especially how to get people involved that might not otherwise feel like they're part of this type of community. We want to share the tips that we've learned for creating and sharing resources in the group, but also beyond it. We want to share about teaching, the benefit for you in teaching, the way to improve your teaching, and how to live code with confidence and bring a little fun into the lesson. And we want to talk about creating an atmosphere that's fun and supportive. And so as we already mentioned, our two main examples will be the statistics study group for linguists. This is a group, a rather small, intimate group that we have at the university that we started for other PhD students and also some postdoctoral researchers, where we work on R specifically in the context of statistical theory. And we'll tell you a little bit more about how that's set up later so you can get an idea for it. And our other main experience is with Our Ladies Freiburg. So that's something we've been involved in for about a year, but has existed in Freiburg for longer. So we have great co-organizers there, Divya and Elisa. They're really great. And this is also a big part of what we're going to talk about today is how we got involved with Our Ladies. And yeah, so we're not trying to give you any sort of hard and fast rules. We're just trying to share our inspiration and our experience, and we'd love to hear from you on how you implement in our group. So we're mostly looking forward to the discussion at the end. So I hope that there are some interested people. And so specifically why you might want to start an R group. So what might be some reasons that might lead you to this point? Well, you might want to learn a specific tool or method. So like I said, we worked through learning statistical theory in the context of R, but you could also start a group for text analysis or for creating visualizations, for learning something specific. You might also have heard of a book that you want to work through. So we all know that the R community produces a lot of great books, a lot of which are open access and free. And having a group like this really helps you work through a book like that in a way and not lose your motivation to work through it. It's also great to help each other analyze data. So maybe if you have data for your own research or you're doing a portfolio and you want to work through some mock projects. And sometimes it helps just to have someone else there if you get stuck on a bug, just to help figure out what might be going on. Of course, it's also just fun to find other coding buddies. You might network with some interesting people who are involved in data science and in R. And we think you really deepen your own understanding of a topic when you are in a context where you teach it. So the teaching in and of itself can be a great tool for your own learning. And of course, just to have some fun with R, because that's what we're all about. So in this talk, we put together 6 easy steps to help you set up your own R group. So we'll get into what we think are the 6 main points and tell you how that works for us.
Yeah, so we think the first step would be kind of identifying the need. So where's the need in your community, in your surroundings for a group like this? So a couple of things that you could think about would be, what's the aim of the group? So as Kyla said, you want to learn more about a specific topic like text analysis or statistics. Is it also a lot about spreading diversity? So Our Ladies is of course all about that and about empowering underrepresented communities or underrepresented people in the R community and data science community. So that's something to think about. What's the aim of that group? Then what kind of a level are you imagining? So when we started our statistics group, I think most of the people in there were at the beginning of their R journeys, or is it a really mixed group? So in Our Ladies, it's typically fairly mixed because we have meetups every month that vary by topic, and yeah, you get all kinds of different people. And so that's just something to think about. What's the level? What kind of people is this helpful for, or what kind of people do you want to get involved in this group? Yeah, and so what do these people, what do your participants, what do they want and what do they need? So as I said, in Our Ladies, we talk about all sorts of topics. So for example, the last meetup was us talking about sentiment analysis and text analysis. The next meetup, I think, will be about geographical data. So something completely different. And that's something to consider. Is it something kind of specific that you want to work towards, or will the topics kind of change every week or every month. So in our statistics group, we tend to focus on statistical models or approaches that are useful for linguists, so for all kinds of linguistic data, and also just on broader R skills and being comfortable with R and making nice visualizations and that kind of stuff. And I think it's also definitely absolutely okay to think about what you want to get out of this, right? So it's about what the participants can and want to get out of this group, but it's also what's useful for you. What are you interested in? I mean, there's no point in starting a group about some topic that you don't really feel that passionate about, or that's not very useful to you. Okay, and just to talk about the format of this group, that can be a lot of different things. So our statistics study group is, as the name says, is a study group, and we'll talk a little bit later about how that works and how that's set up. It can also be kind of a workshop format. So that's what we typically do for our ladies. So that's you talk about one topic for 1.5 or 2 hours. And it can be, they're not really that connected to each other necessarily. So it can really be a different topic for each workshop. You can also do kind of coding sessions where you code together. Another format would be to find something like a tandem partner for learning or practicing R. So that would be really just 2 or maybe 3 people. And that would be especially useful for when you're in a very similar situation as somebody else. So you're just starting your master's or your PhD or something like that, or you want to kind of sharpen your skills in a certain area. And there's another person who has exactly the same aims or similar aims. That would be a great situation to find a tandem partner and then decide to work through a certain book or something like that together. Another format would be to have a book club, so to really focus on one specific book or resource and read one chapter of it per week or per 2 weeks or whatever you decide. Another option would be to have a data cafe. So data cafes, that often means that people bring their own data that they're currently working on, and then discuss that with others. So get some help from other people in the group to figure out what's going on with their data, or to figure out how to make their visualizations prettier. And what you can also do is to do Tidy Tuesday. So that's kind of a type of coding session in a way, where you go through the Tidy Tuesday data set. So Tidy Tuesday data sets, those are posted every Tuesday, and it's always a different data set. And that's really a challenge you can set for yourself or for your group to make a pretty visualization from that data, or to maybe fit a model to it and things like that. And of course, you can mix pick and mix as you like. So what we've done in Our Ladies Freiburg is to have one workshop per month, and then one Tidy Tuesday a month. So that's been kind of our setup for the past couple of months.
Yeah, and then once you've figured out who you're aiming at, your next step is really to figure out what's a workable approach. And so we specifically say a workable approach here. It doesn't have to be a perfect approach. There is no perfect solution, but just something that's going to work for you and for them. So for our statistics study group, like I said, this is a bit of a smaller group. Most people are coming every single time, like Julia said, so we can really build up on a specific topic. And for this, what we usually do is we have people read a chapter of a selected book in advance. This allows us to make progress a lot faster. And we have one volunteer who takes notes, usually in our Markdown file. And our Markdown file is great for taking and sharing notes because you can run code, see the output, and comment on that just in plain text, and save this as a resource that you can really look back on whenever you're working on this topic again. And then we have that person kind of lead us through the notes. And so in the beginning, when we started the group, people were quite nervous to lead us through notes, but we just over and over again told them, you don't have to know it. You just have to lead us through it. And if you get to the middle of your notes and you say, I have no idea what this topic is, it's totally fine. So we do it that way, that we spread the load of the work, but we don't expect anyone to have to know something in advance. And we always accompany that with practical exercises, makes people be able to try it out hands-on, makes them feel successful. So that's how we usually do it in the stats group. In Our Ladies, it's a little bit different, like we said. So we usually have either a guest speaker, or we have 1 or 2 people teaching each session. And then we alternate that, like Julia said, with Tidy Tuesdays. So we can just practice working with data in between and coding together, building a community, but without any sort of a led workshop type of format. And some things that you might want to think about when you are trying to design your own approach would be how much preparation you want the participants to do. So in Our Ladies, we just expect people to show up ready to learn. So you don't have to have any experience with the topic. You don't have to have any experience with previous topics. We try and meet everyone where they're at when they arrive at our workshop. But with the statistics study group that we have at the university, we can have people read in advance, which helps to speed things up. So that helps us to really build from session to session. And neither of these formats are better or worse. It really just depends what kind of a situation you're working with and what your goals are. You can learn a lot wider variety of things if you have people just show up ready for any topic. And of course, you also need to think about how much preparation you need to do, right? So we are big fans of varying approaches that take longer to prepare with those that don't. Like I said, we alternate between parallel coding and organized workshops just to sort of lighten this preparation load without losing any of the feeling of community. And you also have to think about how consistent the group is. If it's new faces every time, public, you don't know who's coming, then you have to sometimes think about mixing things for beginners with things for advanced people, or how you're going to sort of make sure that everyone stays on track or can follow what you're saying. Whereas if you have the same people, you can, like I said, you can build a little bit more on the topic. And then the only last thing to think about there is the logistics. What kind of format do you want? Right now, it's probably an online format. The duration, most of our events are 2 hours with including an exercise, but this is totally up to you. And how often you want to meet. So both of our groups actually meet twice a month, but this is also something that really depends on the group, how much time they want to put into it and how much time that they have. And like we said, we're Tidyverse advocates, so we had to slip Tidyverse into this presentation somewhere. We think it's a great approach for teaching people art just because it's readable, and yeah, we're just fans of it, so we slipped that one in there.
Okay, and then once you have your group together, how do you make sure that everyone feels welcome? How do you make sure that everyone also stays in your group and stays motivated and doesn't just drop out after coming once? So it's really all about what kind of an atmosphere you have in your meetings. So you want your participants to have fun, you want them to look forward to the group meetings, and it's really important that everyone should feel that way. Everyone should feel welcome, and that often means that you have to specifically invite and encourage and empower underrepresented groups to not only participate, but then to also lead. So that's especially the case in Our Ladies, of course. So that's the entire point or the entire mission of Our Ladies. So one thing to consider is, how do you present your group kind of to others, to people who might be interested in joining? So maybe this is a little bit small, but here's our first blurb, so our first little description that we put out when we started the group, and I'll just read the first couple of sentences. So it says, have you always wanted to improve your statistical analysis skills? Have you downloaded R but never opened it? Do your hands start to sweat when you're just thinking about math? If you've answered yes to at least one of these questions, fear no more. The Statistics Study Group is here to help. right, and so on. And then we go into who we are and what we do or what we're planning on doing that semester. And we end with no calculator necessary. So, and we chose to phrase this description that way because in our context, so we're in linguistics, this is of course a humanities subject, and it's often, people are often a little bit scared or a little bit intimidated by R and similar programming languages, and also by statistics. So we wanted to make it very approachable and to make sure that people feel welcome, even if they don't think of themselves as kind of numbers people, even if they think that they'll never be able to do it, or it's hard. And we just wanted to make sure that we presented this group in a really approachable, really approachable way, so that everyone felt welcome and encouraged to show up and join. Okay, so a couple of more considerations. So what's really important is that people feel that they can always ask questions, or that they can always talk, and that their contributions are valued, and nobody, makes fun of their questions, and people have kind of equal speaking rights and everybody can talk, right? So nobody should dominate the conversations. And for big groups, and also for groups that are more public, unlike our statistics group, this is kind of small and just at our university. So for these big public groups, you might need a moderator. So as the person who's leading the meeting or teaching something, you usually need at least one other person who watches the chat and just makes sure that everyone can participate and feels welcome, right? And something that we think is really important as teachers or as people leading these meetings is to normalize making mistakes, right? So you can never know the answers to everything. We will need to look some things up. When you live code, some things will go wrong, and that's completely normal. And I think that's also kind of encouraging for participants to see that, nobody's perfect. We'll also mess up. And then also to kind of learn how to get out of it again. So how to kind of fix your mistake and get to where you want to be. So a little bit more about live coding. So live coding, what we mean by that is just in our markdown file to not have the code or not all the code prepared, but to kind of write it on the fly while people are watching that. And that's a bit intimidating for sure. I'm still kind of getting better at that. But as I said, so making mistakes while you live code, because that will always happen, is part of learning, and is also part of being or becoming an expert in R, and also showing people how you can overcome your mistakes, or how you can look things up, is really empowering, really important. So things like using the help, so the documentation for functions if you don't remember the order of the arguments or things like that, how to look up vignettes, how to, when you've Googled something and you get a Stack Overflow page, how do you transfer that information to your own problem and to your own code? And that's super important. I think that's actually one of the most important things that we would like people to take out of these, out of our meetings. So yeah, that makes it engaging, and it makes it empowering for the people who watch you live code, but also for yourself. Okay, so a super important thing for us is to empower people that they can take teaching and leadership roles, even or especially the ones who think, oh, I might not be able to do it. And I think Kyla already mentioned that in our statistics group, people in the beginning were really quite nervous and a bit hesitant to write these reading notes for each chapter, because they thought it meant that they had to know everything and be prepared to answer every question, which isn't the case. And now, since we've done it a few years now, actually, now you can really see a change, and that people are really confident, and that their reading notes have also changed and become include more math. We noticed, like, people put really formulas and things in there, which they didn't used to do. So just kind of ensuring participants they can do it, and telling them they are absolutely able to take these reading notes or to teach and explain things. It also really helps to introduce people to the wider R community. So that can be things like rstats Twitter, things like that, because the R community is a really lovely community. We find really welcoming and lots of great resources, and people are very ready to share their code and share helpful tips. So it's definitely a very welcoming community. Yeah. What we also like to do is make it very interactive. So with lots of exercises and lots of things like, oh, we've learned about a new model, let's fit this to a little example data set. And here, especially when you're starting out, and especially if you're starting out with beginners or people who don't have a lot of experience, I would create the exercises in a way that give people kind of little feelings of success. So make it a little bit easier in the beginning, and then you can always build on that. So for example, have people make a fairly simple ggplot graph, and then you can always encourage them, if they know, if they can do that, you can always encourage them to change some colors, change the font, or make it look a bit fancier, but really kind of starting slow and giving people the feeling of success when suddenly, oh, they type something in and they get a graph out of it. That's a really great feeling. So that's what we want people to experience. Yeah, and it's also really important that you don't get too stuck with one type of data or one kind of data, but we try to have lots of examples that cover everyone's possible scenarios. So we are in a statistics group at our university. We are all linguists, but within linguistics, there are lots of different data types and lots of different approaches that you could take. So that's really important, so that people feel welcome no matter what data they work with. Okay, and another really important point here is that review exercises are great. So especially if people might rejoin or new people might join over time, so that you can kind of pick these people up where they're at and help them join the group and help them get to the level that you're at that moment. And yeah, finally, we think that it really shows if you're passionate about a topic and if you have fun coding in R, that really shows, and people will pick up on that, and it'll hopefully make them have fun too.
Yeah, so now we want to tell you step 4, which is what kind of resources are you going to make? So the great thing about making resources, especially in R and in the R community, is that these resources really have a great opportunity to exist beyond your group. So you can be working on a certain topic with 10 people, but you can make resources that then can be used by anyone who wants to learn this topic. And one thing that we use is GitHub. So this is something that I know a lot of people who don't have any experience with GitHub can be a little bit intimidated by sometimes. Maybe your mind goes straight to command line programming, but we don't do any of that fancy stuff. We just use GitHub desktop. It's really easy. There's a very tiny, I guess, image here for you to get an idea, but you can use GitHub just as any other application to just share documents. And the way that we do it is we have sort of a fancy or a cleaned up repo that we have all of our resources in. And then we have a backstage repo where Julia and I will share documents that are not quite done that we're still working on, just to kind of collaborate. And the great thing about putting your resources on GitHub is, of course, that not only can you share them on Twitter or easily send them to people if they have questions about a certain topic, but you can also use it as a little bit of a portfolio for yourself. So you can keep track of the things that you can teach, the things that you've learned, the resources that you might have made. So this is a great way to kind of also get a little bit of your own benefit from teaching and have all your resources available to be looked at. And I mentioned earlier, we use R Markdown for taking notes because you can have interactive code chunks in them. But you can also use R Markdown for a lot of other things. You can use R to make presentations such as this one. You can also use R Markdown to make easy websites. And if you make a website with R Markdown and host it as a GitHub repo, you can easily make GitHub pages and put this page on the internet where everybody can easily access it. So this is a tiny little thumbnail of our not super impressive R Markdown website, but you can see that it doesn't take a lot. So you can we just have a schedule, and I think we went on stock images and found a picture of a calendar, and there you go. You have it there. You have the structure there that everyone can look at your resources and just keep up to date. And if you're interested in this, I learned how to do this with a tutorial from Lisa DeBryan that I linked here, which I think is really easy to follow. So that's something that anyone can do.
Okay, then once you have your wonderful group up and running, you've found your people, you've found your resources, you've figured out how to set everything up, how are you going to really get the word out there and get more people to join if they're interested? So a couple of tips here. So first would be to use Twitter. So tweet about it. And even if you don't have a million followers, there are things like if you use the rstats hashtag, it will get retweeted and people will see that, and we can really, I think we got quite a lot of people, especially for our ladies meetups also, who probably saw it that way. If you so in Our Ladies, there are also lots of existing structures already. So things like having a meetup account. So that's where the workshops are put online, and then people can sign up on Meetup, having a Zoom account and things like that. So a lot of these things are already in place. So this is something to think about when you, or if you make your own group. So like we did at our university, what kind of structures do you have there that you could use? So something that we do is we use the kind of old-fashioned email list. So we just have a long list of email addresses and just send an email every now and then and tell everyone who might not be interested anymore that they just let us know, and then we'll delete their email address. That's just how we do it, fairly low tech. In an academic context, it's always a good idea to involve the different departments. So we are the English department at our university, but we also have people from other departments who joined up, who are maybe from German linguistics or from Spanish linguistics and things like that. There are also grad schools that will be happy to send around your blurb, and you can get people to sign up that way. And just to, if you teach at your university or if you teach generally, to let your students know early and also often how useful and fun R is to them. That also tends to make them interested in joining your group. And maybe if you're looking for a job in data science, you could see about using platforms such as LinkedIn to let people know about your group and see if you get people to join up. And another way, of course, an offline way, I guess, would be to make posters, or also kind of little leaflets or flyers, which is also possible in R. So here's a screenshot of a poster we made for Our Ladies Freiburg, which is in poster down. So that's also kind of an R Markdown dialect, basically. And that's something that we showed at an info day in Freiburg, and we got a lot of interest also from the wider public through that poster. So yeah, don't forget the offline channels as well.
Yeah, and step 6 we put in is don't let it take over your life. So we all know that your experience with R and with these types of projects is totally a roller coaster. You might have tons of inspiration one day and another day be totally worn out. So we thought we'd give you a few tips on how to take it easy with your organization. But major disclaimer, we are totally unqualified to give you this advice because our love for R has totally taken over our lives. So, but we'll give it our best shot, right? So, number 1, go for good. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be for everybody. It doesn't have to fit the need of everybody who will ever use R. It just has to work for you and your group. It doesn't even have to be a huge group. If it's a community that's showing up every time, then 5-6 people can also be enough. I think we've touched on this a little bit, that we really encourage teaching self-sufficiency in coding and programming. So we not only involve participants in finding topics or resources, we also involve them in leading the group through taking notes and talking us through a topic. We also try to teach them self-sufficiency in reading documentation and figuring out problems on their own, and so that they can really take these skills forward. We think it's a benefit for them and for you. it's also, if you're short on time, you can always find a great existing resource and just work through it. So if you find a good book, just go through it in order. You don't have to always reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of great stuff that you can use. This one's a little bit harsh. We have a little bit of a rule that we don't analyze people's data for them, especially in an academic context. Sometimes you'll get the situation that people are less interested in learning the topic and just want to get something done. Sometimes you have to put limits on this just for your own self, that you will teach people as much as you can, but you won't do their tasks for them, which we believe is better for them as well, of course, right? And also think about your own priorities. So think about what number on my priority list is this group. And if it's number 1, maybe you're looking for a job, you have lots of time, then go for it. If it's a little bit lower, that's okay too. And all you have to do is figure out how much time you can and want to put into each thing that you do for the group, and then stick to it. So in our experience, that requires a lot of self-motivation or some self-control, because we always get really excited and we want to make lots of different exercises and data sets. But the long run solution is to figure out what number that is for you on your priority list. Now, if you can get a co-organizing buddy, it is the best thing that you could possibly do. So me and Julia now do everything together. We teach everything together. We organize everything together. And this has really been the key to our success in organizing these groups, because if one of us is super busy, the other one steps up. If one of us doesn't really understand a topic, the other one usually does. And you don't have this feeling of sitting in a spotlight and having to know all the answers. So if you can find someone who's also interested, this is a great thing to have. And finally, try not to talk about it too much with your non-stats friends or family, otherwise they might start getting a little bit tired of the stats talk and the R talk. We wanted to put this on as a tip, but then we realized, A, it's actually impossible, because when you're passionate about something, you have to talk about it, you have to share it. And B, it's not so bad anyway, because other people around you can also get inspired by this and even see it as a positive thing. So this is a personal thing that my mom wrote on her Facebook about how proud she was about us doing our stuff. So in the end of the day, we decided this is not a good tip anyway.
Okay, so in summary, here are our 6 steps again. So identify the need in your community, find an approach that works for you, but that also works for the participants. Make sure that you have a nice atmosphere. Everybody should feel welcome. People should be motivated to turn up again. Create resources and also share them. Spread the word about your wonderful group, and don't let it take over your life, or maybe do if you want to. That will depend on your situation. And yeah, so for us, starting this group, starting our stats group, and then also joining R Ladies a bit later has really changed how we feel about R. So we really think we've learned a lot more this way than we would ever have alone. We've gained a lot of confidence in teaching and in leading groups. We now feel like we're really a part of this really lovely, welcoming R community, instead of, a lone single student trying to make it in academia. And it can feel quite lonely sometimes. So it's always nice to have this kind of community. Yeah, we think we've managed to encourage some people to join and to get into R who might not otherwise have done that. And something we work on and hope we do is to spread inclusivity in the wider stats and the data science communities.
Yeah, and so we also just want to give a shout out to our Ladies Freiburg. Like we said, we're not the original founders of Our Ladies Freiburg. That's Divya Sernani and her co-organizer Elisa Schneider. So we want to say thanks to them also for taking us into the Our Ladies group. And Julia and I teach a lot on Our Ladies Freiburg, and we think it's a great group. Now that it's online, if you feel like following us, please follow us on Meetup, and maybe we'll have something that'll interest you sometime soon. Yeah, and that's it. So I hope that we have managed to give you some inspiration and share a little bit of our own experiences, and also just show how much fun it is to us to have these groups and kind of get that spark going for maybe some new groups. We're always happy to take your comments, or if you want to talk about starting an R group, or you want to whatever, just drop us a line. We're always available and approachable. Yeah, and we'll be happy to have a conversation and answer some questions if anything is there. So thanks for having us.
Wow, that was really that was really excellent. Really thank you for this presentation, and there is a lot of questions. And also myself as our organizer in my region and my country, I think I'm really excited about all the tips you shared. So can't wait to try some of them in the next meetup. So the question will be in order as they appear in the chat, and feel free to jump in. Yeah. So the first question is about your setup. For example, the presentation, a lot of comments about how good looking they are. So I think someone asked, what are you using to do this type of presentation? Like what technology, or if there's any Markdown template also to do that? That's the first question.
Yeah, so the presentation we're using right here, so that's just an R presentation. So if you're in RStudio and you want to create a new document, one of the options is just called R presentation, and this is basically a Markdown, or everything if you know Markdown, everything that applies to Markdown also applies to an R presentation. So you can do things like, well, you have just the text on the slides. You can also have R code. You can also create some kind of a graph or a model output and show it on the slides. It's just a Markdown. It's really just a Markdown thing where you can then hide the code or show the code as you like. And yeah, it's really easy. So if you just open this new R presentation document, it'll already have a few slides for you, so you can kind of see how it works. And then I think you can get into it pretty quickly. And it's one of these nice things. So anything in R Markdown will just look very nice, even if you don't do a lot. So it's just one of these things.
No, yeah, indeed, they look really nice, and
Thanks.
also the visual and everything was really cool. So, and
yeah, we
I
didn't
think
make these, unfortunately, but we tried. We gave credit, so you can check these people out on Twitter.
But we have a great community, and we have now a lot of artists doing this amazing visuals sometimes. So I mean, really, we are really lucky to have this community. So one question, and I think that's really interesting, is about the study group. So the person says it's really a cool way to engage with the community. So how will you do that if you have, for example, like something like 100 people that would like to join? So do you have any advice? So.
Yeah, so we actually participated in an Our Ladies Edinburgh online webinar last night. We were just participants in the audience there, and they did a really nice thing where they put everyone, like groups of 3 or 4 people, into random breakout rooms in Zoom. And then you could introduce yourself. And this was something I would have never thought about, but what I was really inspired by, because it forced you to, or it just gave you the opportunity to talk to people that you might not otherwise talk to. And of course, if you have a group with 100 people, especially like on Zoom, most of the time, you're not going to end up saying anything. You're just going to kind of look in the background. So this is a really nice opportunity for that. And I think so that's a nice way to do it in an online way.
Okay, thank you. And I think a follow-up for that question is like, what motivates you to run the group in general?
Yeah, so with the statistics group, that was born out of us wanting and feeling like we needed to learn statistics. So that was more of like an internal motivation that we thought, okay, how is the best way for me to learn all this statistics stuff? And we thought, okay, doing it alone, that's a huge challenge. So if we do it as a group, then we can all inspire each other, we can motivate each other, and we won't be as likely just to stop. So I think the stats group was more of an internal motivation, and Our Ladies was more of actually hearing about Our Ladies in general, and then looking to see, does Freiburg have one of those? And then when we found that they did, that was really exciting, because this really fits into our overall ideology about data science and stats and the programming world and the STEM world, that these efforts that support women and underrepresented genders in these communities are so important, and they're such a nice and rewarding community to be in. So that was more of us just stumbling upon it. I mean, if you don't know if there's an Our Ladies in your city or area, then you should definitely find that out, because that can be one of the best ways to get into the R community. And if there isn't one, then there's also like an online global group that can cater to the people who don't have like a nearby group. So yeah, I think that's how we got into it.
Yeah, so the way or before we started this statistics group, I actually started working through a statistics book with a colleague of mine, so not Kyla, but a different colleague, and that was going okay. But we also thought, well, it would be a lot easier if there were more people, and if we could kind of split up the note taking a little bit. And yeah, that's also kind of how we got the idea and how things started, and that really helps if you're learning in a bigger community. Then 2 people is great, but the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, thank you. That's and I can totally relate to that. And so I think a lot of interesting question. I think on another question, you also have a lot of greetings for Our Ladies group in the chat. You have Dublin, Warsaw, and other places. They all say hi. So
that's
really
exciting,
because you mentioned Our Ladies. And I really hope we can have Our Ladies, or more Our Ladies in my region. I think we have just Our Ladies in Benin, in West Africa, to my knowledge. Maybe I can be wrong, but that would be so cool to have a group here. So if you can also give advice, maybe we can talk about that later, but still have interesting question in the chat. One question is, for example, like they say, it's impossible to don't let it take over your life, you know, because you are so passionate about all of this. And when you're involved as an organizer, so how do you find a balance between work, life, and this type of engagement?
Well, yeah, do we find a balance? Maybe we should rephrase that as a question. Do we find a balance? Well, so something we tend to do is when we message or talk and want to plan the next meeting, something that we tend to do is to say, okay, I have the morning for this, or I have till 3 in the afternoon for statistics group, and that's it. And then if it's like we said, go for good, not for perfect. So that's something we tend to do, and then more or less stick to it. It really depends. Maybe another tip is that if you have a resource that you really like, so if you're going through a book and that's going well and everybody enjoys it and it's useful, to stick with that and don't go too crazy with finding lots of additional resources on all the topics. That's just not always going to be possible. And if you have a good standard resource, people can always go and find more tutorials or find more information. So don't try to provide people with all the information. Stick a little bit with your resource if that's something that's working for you.
Yeah, and if you have a co-organizer that's as great as mine, then you can always just meet up with them and talk about your stats group for the whole afternoon and not have to feel like you're you're boring anybody. So sometimes you just need a buddy that understands, and then it's okay.
Indeed, that's really true. So maybe coming back probably to the study group, I guess, how do you handle different levels of knowledge or background in the group where you have people coming from different background? And I think I can understand this can be technical because it's a statistical related. I mean, the topics are related to statistics and other things that can be complicated. So how do you handle different levels of like knowledge in your group, like this heterogeneity?
Yeah, so a couple of ideas. So one of them would be that if we read a chapter and in that chapter, the author mentions a more basic statistical concept, doesn't explain it, just mentions it, that we then also, when we go through the notes, kind of pause and ask, okay, so what does it mean if a model is more conservative? What does that mean? So just reviewing things or reviewing ideas constantly, even while we're learning about a new topic or about a new model. That would be one thing. Something else would be that if we do exercises, or if we ask people, okay, so today we did a Poisson regression, and now let's apply this to this data set, we tend to give people different steps they can go through, and they go from kind of just fit a model and then do some diagnostics. And that's kind of the basic level. And if people do that, that's great. And then if they have time, we tend to give optional objectives, or kind of give things like, okay, now make a fancy visualization of the predictions or things like that. So more advanced things for them to do, so that our exercises tend to have several levels. And then if people complete the first 2 or 3, they feel good that they've completed, that they've made, they've fitted models to data. That's already great. And then if they can also get predictions out of it and model and graph them or whatever else, then that's also great. So everybody's busy and everybody's learning something, just at different levels. Or sometimes what we'll do is say, look up the documentation for this function, or have a look at have a look at the documentation for this additional package we haven't used yet, if you're already done with the exercises. So we always try to have it at different levels.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's really interesting to have this type of approach, because I think it can be an issue sometimes. And we have another interesting question about a topic that come up sometimes. Have you had any experience of meetup chapter members who want to learn R, but also have parenting responsibilities?
Yeah, so we have of course had this experience, and I mean, nowadays, or at the moment with Zoom, it's sometimes a little bit different of a situation where, of course, we never say you have to have your camera on, you have to have your microphone on. If you have kids and that, we try to make it work with that. We also try and make it work in our statistics group, and that we put the time around what people have. So if they say, my kid takes a nap at 2 p.m., then we say, great, we can do study group at 2 p.m. That will work, So I think this is just about flexibility, and just about knowing that no matter what people are going through on the side, that you try and accommodate for that, and you never try and say it has to be this way or no other way. So yeah, but that's definitely a big topic right now, the current situation. So yeah,
definitely. A question about, for example, organizing. When as an organizer, and sometimes in some group, you can be stuck in a position where you do a lot of presentation yourself, or it's just 2 or 3% always does some presentation, and the rest of the group, either they don't want or don't feel that confident. So I know you did a lot of nice suggestions in the presentation, but if you can maybe sum up, what would be your take to probably galvanize the group and make sure that everyone feel confident enough to do some presentation and to have this type of diversity, and not seeing always the same faces in your user group presentation, at least? You have any tips or something that work well in practice?
Yeah, so one thing, when we started with for example, in the stats group, because statistics is something that a lot of people are quite anxious about, especially when it gets a little bit math related. People start to think, I can't do that. And we've always encouraged people, just try it. And if you can't do it, if you get to the point where you say, well, I have no idea, then there's always someone who can help you out. We'll always help you if you say, oh, well, the book said this, but I don't understand it. That's enough. You can also just stand there and say, this is what it says in this textbook, but I don't understand it. And we can all talk about it, because if you don't understand it, nobody probably understands it, or maybe not everybody understands it, right? So that's one thing that we do. With our ladies, we've had the idea to also have people either do, so you can have them sign up for lightning talks, like a 10-minute talk, and you can also have them, give them the opportunity to teach with someone who's more comfortable with it. So if I teach a lot for Our Ladies Freiburg, then I can offer, if anybody is feeling that they might want to teach, but they're a little bit intimidated by it, like we can tag teach. And you know, if you have a topic that I also know something about, then teaching together usually makes it easier, even for us. I mean, we've gotten relatively confident with teaching and talking in R, but we're always more confident when we're working together, and we know that if one of us doesn't know something, then the other one can usually jump in with something. So just about making people feel comfortable and making them feel like nothing can go wrong, because most of the time, not much can go wrong anyway, you know?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that can be interesting. And now there is a lot of way to achieve that, but yeah, okay. So another question, and maybe this is one I also have, and I think just now, I think before this video was in the Zurich R meetup. I think this would not have been possible if it was not online. And I think because of the situation with COVID-19, we have many meetups now that are online. It can be bad for some people because I think some people prefer to do like presence, like in a physical space meetups if the situation allow. But I think one benefit is like many people can attend really good quality talks from all over the world. So for example, it was really interesting to talk about ecological data and many approaches that can be really interesting. So what do you think, for example, moving forward, let's imagine a world without COVID-19 or something, and then what do you think it will have an impact in the way we are running a user group in the future, even if we can meet like in physical space and everything? Or what are your thoughts about this situation of online meetups, and what do you think like way forward in the near future?
Yeah, so I think for these kinds of applications, so teaching people how to code or coding with people, meeting online can actually work pretty well. If you do a couple of things like Kyla mentioned, like the Our Ladies Edinburgh did with putting people into breakout rooms, putting people into kind of smaller groups, and then maybe dropping in and seeing how it's going. So people are not as shy, because sometimes one of the big problems is that people are so shy when they're supposed to talk on Zoom or online, and that kind of helps if it's smaller groups, and yeah, if it's not as intimidating, that can really help. And I think that we might want to keep at least some things online, also because now people have joined our statistics group, so we have someone from Canada now, and of course once, hopefully soon, when Corona is over, or at least more under control, we don't just want to kick these people out again. I mean, that would be a real shame. So I think as long as it's feasible and as long as people want it, we would want to keep it as accessible as possible.
Yeah, thank you, and happy to hear that. And maybe a last one, and it's something we are trying to experiment in my region, is like doing meetups in group. For example, Senegal and we do one meetup together, and we'll merge like we pick one topic and we share in both our meetups group. And we are trying even to do that between 3 countries to see, because now that it's online, I think we don't have any really barrier. So I don't know if, for example, for Our Ladies or for other type of groups, you have similar setup and like trying to organize like meetup between many organizers from different groups. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, we do have a similar setup. So I think going into next year at Our Ladies Freiburg, we have 5 talks planned, and we're getting speakers from all over the world ready to talk about those. So we have speakers in Europe, but also in South America and all over the place. And I think that's just a really, really exciting part of this whole experience. So there's so many downsides to our current situation, but one of the major positives is this ability to really network with people that otherwise you would have never had the opportunity to network with. So we were really excited to be listening to Julia Silge talking in, I think, Utah in the States at an Our Ladies Edinburgh talk, and we're sitting in Germany and can listen to this. That's something we never would have been able to do, like neither in the States or in Edinburgh. So this is really great, and also helps you to just get to know and get a feeling for the community that's much wider than the people you interact with on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's really exciting, and I definitely hope that that continues in some formats for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, for all the advice and everything. I didn't really mention everything in the chat, but there is a lot of really comment about your energy, and it's very inspiring. It's really one of the best webinars I think attended, and I think a lot of cool advices. And I think many of us here, I think, are part of a group, an organizer just going there. So I think there's a lot of things we can try in the future, and I think I totally agree with the energy, and I think thank you for this. Thank you for the talk, and video will be on YouTube. So I hope many people will join and we share within our respective groups, and because I think there is a lot of good advice on how to run group and empower our community, and that's really cool. I don't know if you have any last word or something you want to say to the YR community and our community in general.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for being a great community. You know, we wouldn't be this excited and this passionate about it if it weren't for all of the great people that are starting groups, sharing tips and sharing resources, making our art. So thank you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and thanks a lot again for your time, and it was really great. So, and thanks for the YR conference and community for organizing all these interesting webinars.